Discussions were had about these creatures, these first, and all he could gather was that these scaled ones knew of their existence, but had never directly contacted them before. These creatures were said to be entities of great power and intellect, who had harnessed the very power of the demonic planes, as well as the nature of the divine itself. Yet they were themselves, although according to myth, immortal. They were in fact born of the true prime. The first prime, the original place where life had willed itself into being from the cacophony of power from all the planes that had touched it. This place had no known location, and it was said it was the central nexus of all primes, with all primes being in some small part created from a portion of this one true prime. It was also said that this prime was in contact with every plane of existence, and yet from what he had seen, he knew nothing of such a place. For when he looked across existence from the host's place of seeing, he had seen no indication of such, but he did not tell them this. He was then told by one of the younger scaled ones that it was theorized that this place had been taken by the demonic source at some point in the past, and since then had vanished from the touch of all. Another scale one offered forth the theory that this place had severed its contacts with all other primes in order to protect its sanctity in future times, to keep it pure and untouched, eternally without taint or subversion. And other ideas were mulled over and passed forth, but all made his head spin and left him somewhat confused, but at least he now had possibilities. There could potentially be a prime where all of the planes touched, and where even the demonic source itself could potentially be traversed to. This idea intrigued him, and he swore to them he would test this out if he ever got the chance to find such a place. It was safe to say he had started to grow content with these talks, with the presence of others around him, of an uneasy peace within him. These lesser creatures believed he was an unknown, and truly had no memory, and he would let them think this as long as it served his purposes, all the while his threads reaching out from their realm, prying further into the planes that touched their own. Time passed by quietly, until one of the threads he seeded upon a plane where the scaled ones had contacted had vanished from a realm he had placed it within. He reached out slowly to that place and let his power flow back there, only to find something waiting on the other side. Something familiar yet foreign to him. Something that felt, well, like him. He quickly explained to the scaled ones that he could sense something upon the place where they had contacted, and they were puzzled by his admission of such powers. They opened a small rift to this prime, allowing them to peer through, to question their envoy within this realm. But they were confronted with a terrible sight of carnage, devastation, utter annihilation of the realm that lay before them. He peered through their rift and could sense immediately himself again, and asked that they open the rift so he could enter and discover what had happened there. They reasoned it was a bad idea, but his demands were eventually met, with the rift being enlarged so he could step through. And as he did, he felt the magic wash over him. A daemon was here, and it was truly a powerful one, beyond anything he had felt before, and it was feeding. He examined the threads of the prime he now stood upon, and he could see the daemon's imprint slowly corrupting this realm, absorbing the magic that flowed across the land and replacing it with his own demonic energies. It was his, but yet was somehow not. He drew a portion of it to him and pulled it apart, stripping it thread by thread, unwinding it, unravelling the intricacies, and identifying each portion of it, examining the powers this daemon had, and could find nothing. No ability to fling forth demonic energies, or manipulate the realm upon which he stood. No ability to command his legions, like him. No legions of minions, in fact. This was a single entity. No way to take it by subversion, and no way to surreptitiously pull the demonic plane out from under his control, as the corruption of the land was happening, and the power absorbed was flowing toward one spot. The place where the fires and clouds of thick smoke and dust could be seen, with intense lightning writhing all around, accompanied by the deafening sounds of rending stone. It could have been mistaken for a volcano erupting, but he knew better. From behind him the Scale Ones watched from the relative safety of their prime. They asked if he needed their aid, but he declined, and told them he would contact them when the fight was over, as he did not wish to lose his newfound friends. They understood, and wished him in all his divinity a successful exploration, and then sealed the rift, leaving a tether for him to request a recall when he was ready to return. He followed the flow of magic, pulling at threads and taking them into himself as he moved. It was indeed of his own kind. No, it was actually of himself. This meant that this daemon, whatever it was not only like him, it essentially was him. Could it be that it found his source, or perhaps even a lesser of him that he had no knowledge of? He would find answers from this daemon, and he would no longer be alone in his existence. Finally, an entity his equal to share his power and knowledge with. As he approached, he saw a sight he had no former experience of. A colossal manifestation of power that was beyond reasoning. Limbs of such size and strength. He had never realized his kind could be so large. All of the confrontations he had been a part of had ended with him fighting entities several times his size. This was true. But this daemon, this power, was like nothing he had witnessed before. The head, if that was what it was nestled beneath so many protrusions of spines and spikes that it was hard to make out, and the neck of this form was long and thick. It was so immense it was beyond his scale to reason. Even the Scale Ones were nothing more than the size of his hand in comparison, and they were by all his travels considered to be very large. But this thing had hands, well, clawed implements, that were covered in thorny spikes that could be considered hands, that could crush a scaled one with ease. All around it magic was flowing, circling in a maelstrom, twisting and tearing apart as it fed upon the shredded reality of this prime, feeding hungrily as once he had upon the hosts. And he felt the voices for the first time in many years, pushing forth, urging him to feed with his brethren. This creature was easily the size of the huge stone formations that creatures built their cities in the shadows of, usually topped with the white, soft ice that fell at times from the skies on some primes. He had seen this upon the prime he had just left, and was still in awe at the sheer size of this daemon, and as soon as he got to the edge of the maelstrom, it acknowledged his presence with a simple gaze and nod.